we're diving deep today
Ooh, exciting.
into some murky waters.
I like it.
Yeah, we're going to explore the scandals that just rocked the fashion world back in 2018.
Oh, yeah, those are some big names.
Huge names. You've probably heard of them. Mario Testino and Bruce Weber.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And we're going to go way beyond just the headlines. We really want to understand how all of these accusations against these giants in the industry expose like a deeper problem.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how those allegations weren't just, a scandal that went away.
Right.
It was a catalyst for a lot of people to step back and examine the power structure of fashion.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like we're talking about just random photographers here.
No.
Testino photographed royalty,
Royalty.
Princess Diana,
Wow.
and even the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's engagement photos.
Huge.
Huge. And then Weber, his work defined the aesthetic of like these iconic brands, Calvin Klein, Abercrombie and Fitch, for decades.
I mean, their influence was everywhere.
It was everywhere.
And that's what makes this story so important.
Right.
Because it really gets into, how power, especially in these creative fields, can be used to silence people and manipulate people.
Yeah, so let's set the stage here. 2018, huge New York Times report comes out detailing all of these allegations of sexual misconduct.
Against both of them.
Against both Testino and Weber.
Wow.
And 13 men, including assistants and models, came forward with these accusations against Testino.
And some of these accusations went all the way back to the mid-90s.
Wow.
And you have to understand the structure of the fashion world. It's very hierarchical.
Okay.
And so these aspiring models are often really young and vulnerable.
Yeah.
And they're so eager to make it.
Right.
And they rely on these photographers like Testino for exposure in their careers.
And it makes you think like someone who was awarded an honorary OBE.
Oh, wow.
In 2014, like a symbol of esteem from the British Empire.
Yeah.
How could that person also be accused of this kind of behavior?
That's the big question, right? This dissonance.
Yeah.
Like, how could this just go on for so long unchecked?
Right.
And the answer is often that power imbalance.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's not about the photographer's actions, but about the system that enabled it.
Exactly.
So then on the Weber front, we had 15 current and former models alleging everything from unnecessary nudity to this coercive sexual behavior during shoots.
Wow.
One model, Josh Ardolph, even claimed that Weber grabbed his genitals during a nude shoot.
Oh, my God.
And another, Bobby Roach, alleged that Weber tried to put his hands down his pants during a casting back in 2007.
These are not vague accusations.
Not at all.
The number of people coming forward and how specific they were made it impossible to ignore.
Yeah, so how did Testino and Weber respond to all of this?
Well, Testino's lawyers disputed the claims.
Okay.
And they tried to, cast doubt on the accusers.
Of course.
Weber just straight up denied it.
Oh, wow.
Expressed shock and sadness.
The classic denials.
Yeah.
But the industry didn't buy it this time, right?
They did not Condé Nast, the powerhouse behind Vogue.
Oh, yeah.
And all these other major magazines took action immediately.
What'd they do?
They suspended all work with both photographers.
Wow.
This wasn't symbolic.
Right.
This was a huge financial risk.
Yeah.
Think about it. The ad revenue tied to those names, the editorial calendars they had to redo.
Yeah.
It was a big deal.
It was a message for sure.
Huge message.
So it really felt like a turning point. Like suddenly, even the most powerful people in fashion could be held accountable.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how did Anna Wintour, who was really close with both of them, how did she navigate this whole thing?
Yeah, Wintour practically embodies the fashion world power structure, right?
Yeah, sure.
She released a statement, and she talked about how difficult it was to confront these allegations against people she considered friends.
Right.
But in the end, she sided with suspending those working relationships.
Wow.
And that was a huge shift for the industry.
It wasn't just business. It felt like there was a moral element to it.
Oh, absolutely. And that moral element was even bigger because of the hashtag #MeToo movement.
Oh, right.
That was gaining momentum at the time.
Yeah.
And it just forced this long overdue conversation about abuse of power and silencing victims, not just in Hollywood, but in all these industries, including fashion.
Yeah, it really felt like a turning point for the industry.
It was like this crack in the facade, revealing this pattern of behavior that had been tolerated for years and years.
And you have to wonder if it was happening with these huge names, Testino and Weber, what was happening with other people, other photographers,
Staging directors, all of them.
All of them.
It really showed the power imbalances that are everywhere in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have these aspiring model, so young and eager to please, and they're put in these really compromising situations.
Right, and that brings us to another name that came up around this time, Terry Richardson.
Oh, yeah.
He had all these allegations against him for years.
Years.
But the industry kept working with him.
It's crazy. It wasn't until Harvey Weinstein and the whole #MeToo movement really exploded
Right.
that Condé Nast finally cut ties with Richardson.
Why do you think they waited so long?
I mean, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why wasn't action taken sooner?
Right.
It's like this culture of complicity.
Yeah. How could they ignore all those red flags for so long?
Well, I think it was about protecting these powerful people,
Yeah.
but also maybe a fear of rocking the boat too much.
Upsetting the status quo.
Yeah, and I think the fashion world thrives on pushing boundaries,
Right.
on being shocking. So
Yeah.
that can make it hard to see what's acceptable and what's not.
Right. So you have this environment where exploitation can just happen.
Exactly.
So what happened after all these scandals?
Well, at first there was a lot of shock and denial.
Okay.
I mean, these were icons.
Right.
But then there were conversations that had been bubbling under the surface for a long time.
About power and consent.
Well, yeah. And model safety.
Did they actually do anything, though, or was it just talk?
Some brands and agencies started putting stricter policies in place
Like what?
about on-set behavior, trying to create a safer environment,
Okay.
provide more support for models, and make the guidelines around conduct much clearer.
But was it just for show?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Was it real change?
Did it change the system?
I mean, there's been progress for sure.
Okay.
The industry is more aware, more cautious.
But
But those power structures,
they're still there.
they're still there.
And those structures are everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Not just in fashion.
Right. It's a reminder that we can't let up
We have to keep having these conversations.
and holding people accountable.
Yeah. And it's not just about calling out bad behavior
It's about building a culture of respect
where people can speak up.
without being afraid.
Exactly.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think awareness is key.
Okay.
Understanding these power dynamics
Yeah.
and how exploitation can happen in these subtle ways.
And being willing to say something when something doesn't feel right.
Yes, call it out.
Change the culture.
Not just in the industry, but everywhere.
And remember, change doesn't happen overnight.
It's a process.
We have to be in it for the long haul.
We have to hold each other accountable.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Mm-mm.
what's the big takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's this isn't just a fashion problem.
Oh,
What's a human problem?
yeah,
Power is everywhere.
right.
It's in our workplaces, in our families,
Everywhere.
and we all have to be aware of it.
And challenge it.
Create spaces where everyone feels safe and respected.
And empowered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's easy to think, oh, this is just a fashion thing, right? All
Yeah.
the glitz and glamour.
Right.
But really, it's a reminder that these things happen everywhere.
You're right. It makes you look at the power dynamics in your own life, at work, in your community.
Exactly. And the little ways that exploitation can happen.
Yeah. So as we kind of come to the end of this deep dive, what would you say are the big takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the first thing is we have to believe survivors.
Absolutely.
Coming forward is so hard,
Especially against powerful people.
especially against powerful people. It takes so much courage.
Yeah.
And we need to listen to their stories and believe them.
And create a safe space for them to speak up.
Exactly. We have to dismantle that culture of silence that protects abusers.
Right. And it's not just about the individuals.
No, it's about the whole system.
The system that allows it to happen.
Yeah, we need real change.
So we talked about some of those changes. The industry made new policies, support systems for models.
Yeah.
Are those enough?
I mean, they're a start,
Okay.
but we need a real change in mindset,
Oh, wow.
like a fundamental shift in how power works in these spaces.
Yeah.
It can't just be for show.
Right. It has to be real enforceable change.
Exactly.
And that takes constant work, right?
It does. It's not a one-time fix.
It's ongoing.
We have to keep pushing for transparency and equity.
So as consumers, what can we do?
Well, first, be informed. Ask questions. Make choices that align with your values.
So even our small choices can make a difference.
They can, and don't underestimate the power of collective action.
Yeah.
These scandals were awful,
Yeah.
but they started a movement, a wave of awareness.
That's still going.
And it showed that even the most powerful people,
Can be held accountable.
if we all work together,
That's powerful. We're not powerless.
we have voices, we can use
to
them.
make real change.
And it might not be easy.
And it takes time.
It takes time, but every step we take, every conversation we have, it brings us closer.
Closer to a world without exploitation.
A world where abuse of power is not okay.
On that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah,
It's been heavy, but important.
very important.
I hope it's given you a deeper understanding of power.
and how